Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to You've Championed Yourself. Who are you? I am Chris Ferguson, your host, and it has always been a dream of mine to interview and showcase ordinary people doing extraordinary things in their lives. Those who have taken their dreams and their ideas and turned it into their reality. As they reach beyond their personal struggles, their personal pains, and their traumas, where so many give up, there are those who lose hope. These are not them. These people can walk through their obstacles. They walk past their challenges. They don't know where they're going or where it's going to take them. They just trust themselves enough not to give up, to do the follow through in their personal life, their career, and in relationships. This is what I call a champion in life. Today, I have an amazing lady. I'm a fan of hers. She does so much. She's been through so much, but one word defines her in my heart, and that is resilience. So today I would love to introduce you to Kelly Ferrara. She is an amazing lady, or Flora Du. I'm killing this, Kelly. So let me just bring you in. Let's welcome Kelly to the podcast. I'm so sorry. I'm terrible with names.
No problem, Chris. It's Falardo.
Falardo. Okay, I'll get it. I won't remember it, but I'll get it.
It's all good. Most people fumble up, so it's all good. I forgive everybody.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can we talk about your backstory? What
Yeah,
happened
absolutely.
then and why you're doing what you're doing now?
Right, you bet. So when I was 2 years old, we lived on a farm, and my cousins were burning shingles from the old barn roof, and a spark came out and landed on my dress, and I exploded. And I
Mm,
ended up getting burnt to 75% of my body. I spent 4 months in the hospital. Every 2 days, I'd have to be in the operating room for surgery. And then every 2 years until I was 20 years old, I'd have to go back to the hospital for more reconstructive surgery.
wow. Wow. In I was when I was 16, I had a gasoline incident. I had picked up a lawnmower, not realizing that, back in the 70s, we wore polyester shirts. And I had this polyester shirt on, and I didn't realize gasoline had gotten on me. I just thought I had the smell of the lawnmower. Well, the
Right.
pilot light went out on the stove. So I took a match and went like this. And as it went down, my shirt caught on fire and
Oh, no.
it melted to my stomach. So most people don't know that about me, but I had to go to the emergency room and I had third-degree burns and they had to, peel all of that off. But I didn't, it wasn't bad enough. I needed grafts or anything like that. They just
Right.
told me that my skin wasn't as elastic as it would have been ordinarily.
Right.
So I understand it wasn't to your degree, but anytime you're going through that burn and you see the flames coming up to you, you don't know what to do. You panic.
Yeah, absolutely. How old are you when that
I
happened?
was 16.
15 or 16. Yeah. And people wonder, like, how could I have gotten so extensively burnt? Because, my cousins were right there. And I think what happened was that I was on one side of the barrel and they were on the other side. And I think that while I was walking around, I mean, as a 2 year old, you don't know what fire is.
Right.
You don't, right? You don't know what that is. So I think that was why I was so extensively burnt. But yeah, my whole chest and my back, both my arms, my face, and then a little bit on my legs was just covered in scars. And they say the thing that saved my life was the wet diaper that I was had on.
Wow. The
Yeah,
thing
because the
is
flame
most, yeah,
stopped, right? Hmm.
yeah. Most people don't realize what fire does. I mean, they know that it burns down buildings. They know that they can lose everything that their possessions are, but they really don't understand the pain and traumas it does to a burned victim. And so that's why I define you as resilient. And with that resilience, the next word is success.
Right?
Because no matter, I mean, what you went through was horrible, and I'm sure it was excruciating, and I'm sure it was just beyond mental understanding.
Yeah. Well, I think what happens to a lot of people is people will have something tragic happen to them and they have a choice. They can either move forward with it or they can use it to hold themselves back. And a lot of times people just use it to hold themselves back. They see poor me, poor victim, this happened to me, I'm horrible now, I'm ugly now. right? And there was a time when I was a kid and I felt like the victim because
Mhm.
I just wanted to be beautiful and pretty like all the other girls in school. And but then when I look back, now I see it as a gift because now I'm around the world teaching people about self-esteem and how to love themselves and how to overcome, different tragedies and stuff. And so, and I've done a couple TEDx talks and Medal from the Queen and all these things have happened to me. They wouldn't have happened if I didn't get burnt as a 2-year-old.
Right, but I want to talk about your near death to success.
Okay.
And walk my audience through that process for you, because I think I'm trying to educate people on subjects that it's not a lot known.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm grateful that you're willing to come here and to be so vulnerable. And I thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm happy to be here with you. So what would you like to know next?
Well, okay. Well, when you had that fire, I'm sure it was a near-death experience because it would be totally mentally non-comprehensible.
Yeah. So
and in that, when you went through after all these surgeries, how did you get to that success?
Interesting. Well, and it's interesting that you bring up the whole near death because my mom was telling me when I was an adult that there was a time when she came into the hospital and she saw my chart and on it said 611 or something like that. There was a special code in there. And whenever that code is in there, that means that they had a code in the hospital. And basically, I don't remember what the code is. Maybe let's say it's 911.
Right.
So they'll say 911 station 5E2 or whatever it is.
Right.
And so anybody that's associated with that unit runs to that unit because that means someone's dying, right? Mm-hmm. So that code was in my chart. And so my mom said to the nurses, why is that there? Like, what happened? And the nurses just said, oh, we put that in there just in case.
Ooh.
They didn't want to tell my mom what had really happened. And my mom was only 21 years old at the time. And so anyways, when I was about 18, I wanted to know why I lived. And at that time too, I also worked in the medical record department of the hospital that I stayed in when I got burnt. So I was able to find my medical record and go back to it. But anyways, so I wanted to know why I lived. Being 2 years old, being burnt in 1968 to, most of my body, there's no way I should have lived.
Right.
So,
or other people didn't, with the same injuries, didn't survive.
Right. So anyway, so I went to the hypnotist and I said, I want to go back to 2 days, the day I was burnt and the day that I died on the operating room, because apparently something happened there. And so, because I also didn't know how I got burnt because I didn't remember it. And so we went back to the day that I got burnt and showed me what happened and everything. And then we went to the day that I had, died on the operating room or in the operating room. So here I am, I'm on the table, the operating room table, and I see all these doctors and nurses around me. And, they're trying to revive me, bring me back to life and everything. And here I am, I'm above my body looking down, and there's a little gray thing beside me, and I'm assuming that's God. And we're having a conversation about why I should live. And he says to me, well, you're too young to die. And I said, okay, but why? Why should I live? And so we talked about it, and he said, well, you need to live for your grandpa and your sister. And so he said, it's your choice whether you want to live or die. And I said, okay, fine, I'll live. And then basically came back to life, and here I was, alive. So yeah, it was a crazy experience for sure.
I don't know if you know, but I've had 3 near-death experiences.
No, I didn't know that.
I was 4, not too much older than you.
Yeah.
And I was hungry, so I went underneath the cabinet sinks. And I was looking for something to eat. I was hungry. And in that, there was this can, and it was pink, and I drank it. I didn't realize it was liquid plumber, and that was pink. They don't know why it didn't burn my esophagus and my throat and my intestines and all that, but the toxicity of the chemicals overloaded the oxygen in my body, and I flatlined. So I, like you, am in a hospital, and all of a sudden I see this. I'm there. It's not even I see this, but there's my understanding. I'm looking down on this bed, and there's people there. They're crying. There's people in white coats. They're trying to deal with everything going on. And all of a sudden, it's interesting that what you said, because I didn't see gray. I saw like a light behind a veil. I'm like, okay, let's go figure this out. I'm inquisitive. I'm one of those little kids. So I'm going through the veils, and I get to in front of this bright light. And I said, wow, I really like it here. And he says, my child, what are you doing? Why are you here? And I'm just looking around, and I like here. I'm 4. I don't have any understanding of it. And he's like, well, you can't be here. Oh, okay. And I just stood there. I didn't go anywhere. And then he says, you need to go back. Okay. I didn't go anywhere. So evidently he knew I was a thick-headed kid. So he pumps me right in the forehead and knocks me clear back into that hospital room. And all of a sudden I'm looking up, and I'm trying to see past the people where that thing was that was looking down at me.
Yeah.
And from that moment on, I had spirit guides. I had those imaginary friends.
Right.
And they got me into a lot of trouble. They gave me a lot of bad advice. And as a kid, I had 3 older brothers, me, and then 2 younger siblings. There were 6 of us total. And I just wanted someone to play with. So, it was crazy, but my brothers didn't like that too much. So I had to kind of like exert myself to be accepted or be allowed, by screaming and yelling, So anyway, but needless to say, and then my next one was at 16. And then in 2012, I had 2 pulmonary embolisms, 1 in each lung.
Wow.
And they don't know why. I don't have any proteins. I don't have any factor 5s or any of those precursors for blood clots. But I had 2 pulmonary embolisms, and my mother-in-law died from 1.
Wow.
And in my life, I've always asked, wow. And every time I've met the creator, he's like, I'm not ready for you. And one time I was hot. I was hot, fired hot like a rattlesnake, Kelly.
Right.
And I'm chewing him out. I'm cursing him out like a sailor. And he's laughing at me. And that just made me mad. Matter. And I said, what are you laughing at? He goes, I'm not done with you yet. I'll let you know when I want you to come here.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, fair.
Yeah.
So I have this intimate relationship. So that's why I was like, we have more parallels here than
we do. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So anyway, but the thing is as your successes, I want to talk about your TEDx. Well, let's pick up. It started because of the documentary they did about you.
No, basically about 11, 12 years ago is when I met Charmaine Hammond, and she said, Cal, you need to sell that business you're in and be a speaker. And I just said, why? I'm a burn survivor. So what? And she said, well, no, people will be so inspired by your story. And I didn't see myself as being inspirational. I saw myself as being a loser, because at that point in my life, I was in a toxic marriage. I was in a dead-end job. My business was bankrupting. The only great things I had was my 3 beautiful kids. So I didn't see myself as being inspirational at all. I just saw myself trying to survive. And so, so anyways, she found a way to get her and I on stage, and we did like an Ellen show. And so she was the Ellen and I was the guest, and she wanted to ease me into that whole speaking thing. And then I ended up taking a workshop. And actually I went home that night and I said to my husband, I'm going to be a speaker. And he said, well, how are you going to do that? And who's going to listen to you? And I said, I don't know, but it's going to happen. And that was the start of my speaking career. I ended up taking a workshop on how to be a keynote speaker. And then from there, I just did the work. I just put myself out there and just didn't stop. Anybody wanted somebody to speak on stage, I was there. It didn't matter who it was or what the topic was. I just did it. So
I love that, because the thing is I have that I can do anything attitude also in my life.
Yep.
So I don't know if it's because of similarities, but you had you ended up doing a TEDx talk.
I did about 4. I'm not sure, but about 4 years ago now. And I'd always wanted to do one. I just didn't know if I had the the story. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I knew I had a story, but with TEDx, it has to be different. It has to be, where you're teaching somebody something new. And I didn't know that I had that until I thought of a topic, and it was ugly is still beautiful.
Mm.
And I wanted to show people where you learn that the mirror talks. And I wanted to show people that the mirror doesn't talk. And then I wanted to show people that ugly doesn't have to be a bad word.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
so
love that because when you say that, I don't see you as this burn victim. I see you as like every other kid, because I remember thinking how ugly I was as a kid. I didn't see my value. I didn't see my worth. I didn't see my beauty. I always thought myself as that ugly duckling, and I think all girls do. No matter what they go through or don't go through, they still have that emotional, because generally that is not what's stroked in their world.
I totally get it, because even the beautiful girls think they're ugly.
They do. And so it's like, oh my gosh, I mean, look at these supermodels that are out there, and they're this and they're no, I'm plain Jane. Okay. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. But if you know your value and your worth, and I think that's what I love about you, is your value and your worth. And then they did a documentary about your life when you were burned.
Yeah. So about, you're going to love this. I actually met Wayne Dyer. And so what happened was I went to Maui, and I wanted to meet my favorite authors, which was Wayne Dyer and Doreen Virtue at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I put it out to the universe, and I said, okay, I want to meet my favorite authors. And then next thing I knew, Facebook put up a conference that Hay House was putting on, and it was called Writing for the Soul. It was in Maui. And guess who the two speakers were, Chris?
Wayne Dyer and Doreen Virtue.
Exactly. You never think this sort of thing was going to happen, but it did. So then I said to the universe, okay, show me the money. Because I was a single mom at the time. I didn't have the money to go to Maui for this conference. And sure enough, within a week, I got a check in the mail for $1,500. And my credit card company, they raised my limit for another $1,000. So I had $2,500, and I said, okay, I get it. I'm supposed to go. So I went, and what we did is we learned how to write a book proposal. So then what we did is I said to myself, okay, what am I going to do with this book proposal? Because I didn't win the contest that Hay House was having. So I heard that little voice say, email Brian. So I emailed Brian, and Brian works for a broadcaster here in Canada. And so I emailed him, and I said, look, Brian, I did a book proposal for my next book, Still Beautiful. I'm being encouraged to make a documentary out of it. I don't know if this is something you guys are interested in or not, or maybe it's just a stupid idea. And he messaged me back and said, there are no stupid ideas. We want to see your book proposal. So I sent it to him, and sure enough, to make a long story short, they ended up producing my documentary called Still Beautiful. And they even recreated me getting burnt as a 2-year-old, and my school life and hospitals, and then finally me speaking to a group of 3,000 teenagers. So it was just a beautiful documentary.
Yeah. I love that, because the thing is most people don't realize, and there's so much fear that they keep themselves from accomplishing what they actually can do.
Well, I had no idea that even, 10, 11 years ago when I left my husband, that I was going to have a documentary about my life story. I had no idea that was, I had no idea that I would end up with a medal from the Queen, and I would have, 6 books and be coaching people to write books and become best-selling authors. Like, that was not in my 10-year plan. So I don't make 10-year plans anymore.
Well, I'm glad you don't, because it's because of you. I'm a 3-time international bestseller. And that's why most people don't know our connection, but it's like, I've been working with you for like the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it. I'm working with Corey, but Corey's working with you. And I'm like, okay. And then it's all, once I retired, all of a sudden I had a voice. I was like, I can say anything I want to say. I don't have to hold it back.
That's right. Exactly.
So that's why I created this podcast, so that I could bring people that do amazing things and showcase them. Because there's millions and millions of ordinary people that have such extraordinary stories, but media is not concerned about it now. They've got their own agenda. It's not like when we grew up. I'm older than you, but it's just like, I mean, I saw John F. Kennedy get shot. I
Oh,
saw
wow.
Martin Luther King get shot. I was a child, but there was no Memorex, but they would have, cameras on, and there's no rewind. There's no stopping it. They were videotape. They were recording everything because they didn't have the ability to record.
Right.
And like I said, back in those times, women were burning their bras. I'm like, I don't even know what a bra is. I'm a tomboy. I don't care to know what a bra is, but why are you doing that?
I've never worn one in my life.
So I'm like, okay, this is crazy, but I want to take us to your best-selling authors and let's talk about your books. Can we?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's what happened. When I first became a speaker, my speaker coach said, Raquel, now that you're a speaker, you need to have a book. And I was like, I don't know how to write a book. Right? Like, I'm not Stephen King or J.K. Rowling. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to write a book. And she's like, no, you need to write a book so that when people ask you to speak for free, you got a product to sell. Second of all, if you only speak for 20 minutes and somebody wants to know more about your story, then you've got a book to sell them. And then third reason is to give yourself more credibility as a speaker, so that when event planners are looking to hire somebody, you have a book. So you're going to look more like an expert than someone who doesn't have a book. And so I said, okay, I guess I'm going to have to figure out this book thing. Like, I didn't know. And then, so No Risk, No Reward. This is my first book.
I love that. No risk, no rewards.
Yeah. And, what's fascinating about this book is that I didn't come up with the title until I actually finished writing it. So I had
Really?
no idea. Yeah, I had no idea what to call it. So, and then I wrote my second book, which is Self-Esteem Doesn't Come in a Bottle. That's this one right here. And this is my
Is that
first,
a teenager book? Is that for teenagers or is
it's
that?
an adult book and for teenagers, but we're actually going to be relaunching this book. So, and a whole program to go with it. But that was my first best-selling book. So that one was written 6 months after my first one. And it was crazy because one of my colleagues said, Cal, now that you are an author, you need to be a best-selling author. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm thinking you have to sell 10,000 books in order to be a best-selling author. I'm like, I can't do that. I don't have 10,000 friends.
Oh, that's funny. But most people don't know the behind the scenes requirements that's required to become a best-selling author.
Exactly.
And I'm just grateful beyond grateful that you do, and you help authors become best-selling authors, because that's huge, 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 huge. And what people don't know is that Kelly and I are going to be working together as soon as I get all this stuff together on a book, and on 3 books actually.
Yep.
And so it's just a matter of when, not if. And
exactly.
that's how you have to stay in your energy, is like, okay, no, it's coming. It'll be here. We'll get through it. But in your best-selling author, as a strategist, how do you coach authors into becoming better authors? Yeah.
So the big thing is helping people just to get started. Like, a lot of times people, they know they want to write a book, but they just don't know what kind of book to write, and they just don't know what the steps are to get it written. And so I coach them and make them accountable. So it's funny, I'm got a 90-day program going, and I've got a 1-year program. And it's so funny because the 90-day program, we meet every week. And, here I am, like, coaching them on, even just their book title, for example. And so, we work together to come up with people's titles, and everybody's got input into it. And it really helped because with a group setting, you're getting instant feedback because everybody else is your book buyer, right? With the author, what happens is we get too close to our stuff and we don't see, we just get so close and so attached, and we don't understand that our audience is our buyers. So we need to get their feedback. And so that's what we do as a group, is we really help people to get the feedback and have that group experience. And it's just wonderful watching them grow and getting their books written.
I love that. I love the fact that it's a way of giving back, but it's also a way of sharing and serving. And that's your heart. That is just your heart.
Well, everybody's got a story. Like people come to me and say, "Well, I don't think I have a story. I don't think I have anything to write." And I'm like, "No, you do. You do.
Well,
Everybody does."
I didn't think that my story, it was like everybody goes through crap in life, who's going to want to know mine?
Right. Exactly. But there's somebody out there who is just like you or similar to you who thinks that they're the only one.
Hmm.
And they need to hear from you because then they can, "Oh my gosh, Chris, I've been through that exact same thing. I'm so glad I met you." So, and that's what
But see,
happened
I
to me.
realized that, but it was just, if that was one of my mental blocks that I had. It's like, one, and also I guess getting authentic with myself and doing my own shadow work, it was like I was a little bit ashamed of where I grew up. I was so far beyond the tracks. I didn't know where to go to get to the tracks to try
Yeah.
to find life, But in that, many people don't realize is that we create more in our own head than anybody will ever do to us.
Oh, yeah.
That inner chatter, that thought that I'm not good enough, I'm not, the belittling, the self-sabotaging. And did you ever go through a time where you felt that you were self-sabotaging?
Oh, yeah. Totally. Totally. There was one time, I think this was about 8 or 9 years ago, and anything and everything that could happen to me happened. So my husband started the divorce proceedings, so I only got to see my kids every second week. I got into a car accident. A friend of mine committed suicide. I was dead broke, and I had no bookings, no speaker bookings. And I was like, "What's going on?" And I remember sitting at the end of my bed, and I had my iPad, and I'm researching how to end my life.
Mm.
And I had three conditions. My kids couldn't be the one to find me. It had to be final, and it had to be painless. And I couldn't find that. And so I
Great,
said,
I'm glad.
"Yeah, I know." And I said, "Okay, what can I do? How am I going to get through this?" And I started to think about my mom. My mom would be devastated. My mom would blame herself. Right?
Hmm.
My kids would blame themselves. My sister would say, "Why didn't she ask me? If all this was about money, I would have given her everything she needed." Right? Like everybody would have blamed themselves for me, ending my life. And I
Yeah.
thought, I can't burden my family with that. Everything is figure outable.
I love that. But I interviewed, it's interesting, backing up just a little bit. I interviewed a lady yesterday, and we were talking about our defining ourselves by our past, our lives and the
Yeah.
things that happen in our lives. And I told her I grew up in an orphanage, and she went like this to herself while I said that. So she had grown up in an orphanage, and I didn't know it.
Oh, wow.
And she became a professor, and here I went into law enforcement. But the fact is the only reason why I went into law enforcement is because my brother was murdered. I was 20, he was 23.
Right.
And then it was like there was a lot of injustices. So like you, I had my daughter, and I had an epidural, and it didn't work. And I kept telling them as they're cutting my episiotomy, "I can feel you do that. I can feel that." And they said, "Oh, no, you're not. It's just nerves." So finally, after I delivered her, they sewed me up. I kept telling them, "I'm feeling everything you're doing." They unstrapped my legs, and I lifted my legs up. I said, "Do you believe me now?" And all of a sudden they freaked. It was like, "Oh my God, what did we just put this lady through?" And we didn't trust her or believe her. So the fact is I laid on the same sheet I delivered on for 6 hours. And in a
Wow.
hospital, the biggest infection you can get is a staph infection. And
Right.
I ended up getting a staph infection in my uterus. So at 20, I had a 1-year-old. By the
Mhm.
time I was 22, I had cancer and was a single mom,
Oh,
uterine
no.
cancer.
Oh.
So when you said everything happens to me, I'm like this. Yeah, I get that. Everything does. So, when I was 16, I lost hope in life. I was so exhausted. I was just so mentally gone. I had fallen off of the monkey bars when I was younger, and
Mhm.
the orphanage never took me to the doctor. Well, your brain swells.
Oh,
It was
no.
concrete. That's back in the time when monkey bars were held into the ground with concrete. So I fell on my
Yeah.
head from the top of the monkey bars down to the ground on my head. And they never took me to the doctor, but they kept telling the doctor she keeps passing out and she's having seizures. Well, she's epileptic.
Oh,
So they gave me phenobarbital. So I didn't take the medication, but I saved him. And
right.
at 16, I took 32 phenobarbitals.
Oh my
I was
God.
I was done. I was done.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I took it. I went to bed. I had made peace with myself. I felt good where I was going. And 4 days later, I woke up, and that's when I was hot as a rattlesnake because it's like, you know what? Come on, cry. Come on, creator, God, universe, whatever. You know
Yeah.
what? This is too much for a
Too much.
person to deal with.
Yeah.
Too much.
Yeah.
And that's when he says, and I'm like, ooh, you son of a mama. And I don't think many people have made those words straight to him, to his face, but it was one of the things that I did. So I get it. I get how people don't think their lives are worthy of a book, or who's going
Right.
to, everybody has a bad time. Everybody has an issue. Everybody has problems.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the problems that's the issue in the story. It's the overcoming, getting beyond the obstacles, getting beyond the barriers, and
Mm-hmm.
realizing that happen around you with you as a participant, but it's not something you reached out to grab. It's not your brass ring,
Right.
but you grabbed your brass ring.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you such an amazing individual in my world, because look at what, did you ever think in your life you would be able to accomplish this?
No, I didn't. Like, I always knew that I was a go-getter. Like, I always knew that, um, like, I love doing a lot of things. I can't settle down to one thing. And in my working career, like, I only ever stayed at the same job for more than 2.5 years. And I used to think there was something wrong with me. Like, why can't I just stick with one thing? But speaking and being an author, I've been doing that now for 11 years. So I'm really proud of myself that I've stuck with it. But I think it's also because I have a lot of variety. So if I want to put on a 1-year program and teach people how to write books, I do it. If I want to make blankets and go sell them to, for charity, I do it. So I have a lot of flexibility and a lot of variety, which really keeps me inspired and motivated. And I'm an artist too, right? Like,
Mhm.
so I love that I can, do multiple things, because otherwise I just get bored.
See, I'm the same way. I mean, I was in law enforcement for 40 years. However, the thing was, is I worked 21 years of the 40 years with gang members. So every day was a different day. Every day was a different issue. Every
Yeah.
day was something else. So it wasn't boring. However, when I was making all these successes and helping these kids, guide them out of gangs, it was their choice, not mine.
Right.
I thought there's got to be more. I want to do this on a bigger level. And I went to a high school, and I was at this alternative high school for 13 years. I loved it. The hardest thing I had to do was say, I can't do this now.
Right.
I had a head-on car collision, and the injuries it was like the slippery slope that ended my career in that part because
Mm-hmm.
of it. So I was just like, wow, this is crazy. But I always ask every one of my guests, um, if they could give 3 tips to my audience, if they're an inspiring author, what should they do, or what could they do?
Well, the first thing is to figure out, like, why. Like, why do you want to write a book? Right? So why do you want to tell your story? Is it because you want to be a speaker or a coach? Is it because you want to be an authority figure? Is it just because maybe you just want to create, a legacy for your family? Like, why do you want to do this? Right? Or you just want to share your story? And those are all great reasons. Or maybe you want to make an impact and you want to make an income. There's all excellent reasons. So definitely that, figure out what you want, why you want to write a book, right? The second thing is I would just start writing. It doesn't matter what you write, just write. Because you never know where that content is going to fit. And you know how it is, Chris, when you get woken up at 3 a.m. and you can't get back to sleep. And like I've done that where what's happened to me is here I am, I'm sleeping away, and all of a sudden I can tell I'm actually doing a speech. And it's content that I've never done before. And it's all of a sudden I'll wake up and go, oh my gosh, that's a speech. What the heck? The universe just gave me a speech in my dream. And, and then I got to get up and write it down because I know I'll forget it in a couple hours, right? Or even in 5 minutes, I'll forget it. So I always say to people, just write whatever is coming to your heart, just write it. And the third thing that I would say to people is to don't judge yourself. Right? You don't know what is going to be beneficial or what people are going to want to hear. Like I didn't think people would want to know about my surgeries, but people do want to know about it. They want to know about my skin grafts. They want to know about even how I lost a baby, right? Like there's things people want to know, and we're so quick to judge ourselves and judge our stories, and we think that people don't want to know it, but they do. And so I just say, write it all down, just get it all down, and imagine that person that you want to help. Imagine them in front of you. What are 10 things that you would want to tell them? And that is usually my starting point for whenever I want to write a book or something. Yeah.
That's amazing, because the thing is I think if more people knew this, if this information was available 10 years ago. I mean, I was published back in 1983. I used to write poetry.
Oh,
And
great.
in that, it was how I got the pain out of the childhood, of all the things that had happened. And in that, I wrote a poem, Cops Are People Too.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not realize that. And it was published in the state law enforcement magazine at the time. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm a published author, and then it was like, okay, nothing happened from it. But I didn't realize that what I wrote back in 1983 is so important today, because there's a law enforcement officers who are getting killed for no reason because of the uniform they wear.
Yep.
And it's heart-wrenching to understand that, or even think that people are going to harm other people just because.
Well, and doing a book back in 1983, that was a huge accomplishment.
Well, it was just a poet. It was a poem, but that poem was published in their magazine, in the state law enforcement magazine. And so it was like, okay. And I always wanted to be a writer as a kid, because I didn't know how else to escape how I felt.
Right.
And then life happens and you get on and say, oh yeah, that'll never happen. That'll never happen. I get published. Okay, I'm published. Yeah, that, it was dismissing the accomplishments.
Right.
And then it's like, now I'm a 3-time international bestseller, and I'm just like, I want to tell the world. I want to tell the world, because a lot of people don't realize that, again, one person, it could change their life. And if it changes one person's life, then it's worth its value.
Exactly. Absolutely. And you don't know how you're going to impact people. And that's something that I learned. I did a speech to a group of teenagers, and I just thought they weren't really paying attention, right? Because they were all being so quiet. I thought, well, maybe I'm boring them. Right? Like, that's what I thought. Maybe I'm just boring them. I don't know if I'm actually making an impact. I think I'm just boring them because they're just being so quiet, right? Anyways, I got a text message from one of the teenagers that was there, because I always let them text me their questions while I'm speaking. And then that way I know what else they want to hear. So anyways, I get a text message from this guy, and he said, please don't point me out, but I'm the one in the back of the room with the sunglasses on. And I have glasses on because I'm crying. He says, I've been wanting to end my life. And the girl that's standing beside me, and now you are inspiring me to live.
That's
I was
amazing.
like, oh my gosh. Like
it just was worthwhile. It was just worthwhile. Most people don't realize that kids, they internalize everything. After working with kids for all these years, they internalize everything. And it's that one notice that you make, or it's that one comment you make that doesn't judge, that allows them to be vulnerable enough to speak.
Yeah. And texting them gave him a safe place to share that with me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have. He probably wouldn't have come up to say anything to me because he might have been too scared. He wouldn't have said something in front of the crowd because he would have been scared of being judged. And so the texting gave him that safe space to share that with me.
I absolutely love that, because in life, it is being accessible to those who you can influence and not even realize you're influencing anyone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I asked this of all my interviewees. It's time. I need you to sit back, relax, close your eyes, and take a deep breath in. And I want you to connect with your let's say 2-year-old little child here, since we're going to go way back there. And what would she say of you today and how far you've come in life?
You aren't asking me? Oh, she would say, "You're incredible. You've come a long ways." Yeah.
I heard, "You're my superhero."
Oh.
Because you've gone further and farther than anything she could have ever dreamed at that point in her life.
Right. Yeah. It's been a crazy journey. It really has been. Even my boyfriend says, he says, "Kel, like, I don't know anybody that's gone through so much stuff as you." So.
Well, it's just like my husband. It was backstory here. My parents, my dad was Native American, my mother is white. They were met in the Army. They were both in the Army. Yep. My mom had a child. The Army says, "We're not prepared for women to be in the Army and have children. So we'll give you an honorable discharge and you can become independent with children." Right. So she does. Well, the thing is my dad, he did Korea and he volunteered for 2 tours of Vietnam. So that lets you know he's a whack job. I mean, he's a crazy ass Indian. Let me just put it that way. And I can say it because he's my father. So he got tired of, not being able to go out and get drunk and do what he wanted to do. So he got transferred and didn't tell anybody. He just didn't come home. Oh, wow. And the time back in this, okay, now everybody's going to think I'm crazy, but back in the 60s, society was women don't get divorced.
Right.
Women don't raise 6 kids by themselves.
Right.
So when my mother confided into the Catholic Church told her she couldn't raise 6 kids by herself and said, "Let us help you." So in February, I turned 8. In March, I had my first Holy Communion with the Catholic Church. And June 6th, I found myself orphaned. And my brothers and sisters, we were all separated. And that kind of hate for the Catholic Church was real in my life. Now to move forward, I marry a devout Catholic who his life is totally opposite of mine. He had 2 parents, 2 sisters, and himself. They lived in a brownstone in New York, which was a family brownstone. Grandma's up on the top, aunt and uncle in the middle, dad, mom, and brother and sisters are on the bottom floor. And you have all this support. You have this strong faith. You don't have any of these experiences. And I thought, is this masochistic on my part? What was I thinking? But he's the first one that's accepted me for who I am and what I do.
Right.
And so we're actually that yin and yang. So like I said, your boyfriend is saying the same thing my husband, because I've never known somebody to go through so much in their life and not want to quit.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, it's easy to quit. It's easy to walk away. For me, it's sticking around's a lesson.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And when you think about it like that, like, oh, okay, wow.
Yeah.
So Kelly, I love you from the bottom of my heart of hearts.
I love you too. You're so gorgeous.
I'm so honored that you were here today. And in that, I want to make sure that your message even gets more out there.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate being on your show. You're such an awesome hostess and so many great questions. And, it's just been a great conversation. Like, you really know how to dig deep.
That's called being an investigator. I'm sorry to say, but it kind of goes along with the territory. Hang on one second. It takes a special kind of individual to dream their thoughts and ideas and turn it into into their reality. Kelly Florado, you have done just that. You stepped past your fears. You stayed the course. You had the courage to do the follow through. All of those three things is so important to allow you to get the freedom that you've gotten. Kelly Florado, you've championed yourself. Now we know who you've become. Thank you for sharing your ideas, your story, your thoughts, and your dreams with us here today.